I'm Kavita Matapalli, CEO of MN Associates, Inc. And I see that my colleague Nina has just joined. Hey, Nina, you here? I will be your facilitator for today's session. With me is my associate, Senior Associate Nina De La Salas. She was having some technical difficulties earlier because she was to present today. So let's see if she is able to jump in. I will give the reins over to her. Otherwise, I will carry on the discussion today. We also have with us Tara King, Senior Project Director, Travis York, and Rachel Strivers from AAAS, who will also be facilitating the discussion today from the S-STEM REC.
Thanks, Kavita. Happy to have everybody join us today.
Hi, this is Nina. Can you all see me or hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. That's great.
Would you like me to launch the poll?
Yes.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, questions should be displayed on your screens. We're at 83% participation. Okay, so I can end it and see our results. Here you go. Okay.
So it looks like we're mostly evaluators, but equally share with OPI and Co-PI and researchers. So it's a nice mix. And we've got a lot of track 1 and track 2. Great. So if we could go into the next slide. So we want to make this session as engaging as possible with the fewest distractions. So we ask for your help by observing the virtual meeting etiquette that you see before you on your screen. We have optimized communication for the whole group by enabling the chat feature and making closed captioning possible. If you could rename yourself as directed, that'll also help us to get to know one another quicker. And Michael can assist you if you can run into any technical issues while we are online. Today's whole group presentation and discussion will be recorded. The slides will be posted after the session concluded later today with the recording to follow. During the breakout session, we will take notes and we'll share during the whole group share out. We'll also produce a resource document summarizing this session and the discussion that follows in a week's time. Tara? I'm sorry, Tara, we can't hear you.
It would help if I unmuted myself. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Tara King, and I'm the coordinator of the S-STEM REC. I wanted to just spend a moment telling a bit about the REC, so you have some context. The management of the S-STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, or REC for short, was awarded to the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS, in October 2022 through a competitive National Science Foundation proposal process. In fact, we'd like to state that the material presented today is based upon work supported by the NSF under grant number 222-4093, and any opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in the material or those of its authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of NSF. So in this slide here, if you go back one, Kavita, it shows AAAS's 4 partners who we're collaborating with to lead key aspects of the REC's work. M&A, who is co-hosting today, is providing evaluation technical assistance. AIR is reviewing the impact of the S-STEM program. QEM is providing supports and connections for minorities serving institutions in the S-STEM PI community. And Cersei at the University of Washington is our external evaluator. Next slide, please. So the overarching goals of the S-STEM REC are to support current and prospective S-STEM PIs and programs, support S-STEM scholars, and increase the effectiveness of NSF's S-STEM portfolio. We encourage you to visit the REC's website for more information. Next slide. This slide shows the 5 key activities of the REC. Our virtual event today falls under the REC's Evaluation Technical Assistance Suite. Working with our partners at M&A, the REC provides events and resources for current and prospective S-STEM awardees in the area of project evaluation and generation of knowledge. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Nina to tell a little bit more about this.
So thank you, Tara. As part of the S-STEM REC Evaluation Capacity Development Seat, M&A will be assisting both prospective and current S-STEM PIs, Co-PIs, social science researchers, and evaluators. Our primary focus is to provide technical assistance guidance on the generation of knowledge, develop the research and evaluation plans for the S-STEM proposal, as well as provide ongoing TA through webinars, discussions, virtual and in person, and resource documents to both researchers and evaluators for their ongoing projects. Next slide. Today's session is designed to actively engage you to interact with one another, as well as with the REC team in this new support platform. We hope that we will be starting a new regular series that will also help identify areas where the REC can provide evaluation TA. So this session will include a brief review of the role of the key personnel in data collection, a review of how research and evaluation are different and complementary, and models to address change when conducting evaluation studies. Kavita and Tara will join us for the breakout session. After the breakout, we will reconvene for a share out and some takeaway tips. For those who would like to continue the conversation, we'll extend this for another 15 minutes. If you have additional questions regarding the generation of knowledge, research, and evaluation plans, please use the link or QR code to access and complete the evaluation TA request form. So to provide a baseline knowledge for those of us who are seasoned, current, or even prospective grantees, let's do a quick review of the role of the S-STEM project team members and the evaluator. The project team comprises the PI, the co-PI, and depending upon your track, the researcher. The PI provides the overall leadership from whom formal communication flows, including a submission for the IRB review and approval. The PI also introduces the evaluator to the key secondary staff who are the gatekeepers to data. This data includes student financial aid and academic records, student support services information, and career and professional development. That includes mentoring. So co-PIs typically have a closer view and understanding of the strategies being implemented in their respective departments. As the illustration on the slide shows, the researcher can be someone in the institution with a non-teaching, educational, or social science background. The evaluator, on the other hand, is external and is not part of the project team, but they can be internal to the grantee institution. The evaluator works closely with the team, staff, members, and who have direct oversight over student level data. The researcher in the project is a key collaborator in the evaluation. The researcher is a valuable resource for the external evaluator to navigate through the IRB process, and the external evaluator can be a valuable thought partner for troubleshooting data collection and analysis issues. Both parties are driven to get as much participation from S-STEM scholars as possible with the least burden on the scholars. While the researcher and the external evaluator share the same methods of inquiry and data, they have different goals and objectives. If there's no researcher, then the PI or the PI designates, usually an administrative staffer, plays a key role in helping navigate through the IRB process and troubleshoot issues concerning data collection. Next slide. So based upon your track, whenever research and evaluation are uttered in the same breath, they sometimes become conflated. To highlight the difference, here's a model to show how the work of the evaluator and researcher is different and complementary. A key difference is that evaluation of program determines the merit, worth, or value of the aspect of the program or the program as a whole. Evaluation can judge a project's merit in terms of time. For example, to what extent was a project implemented as planned? Or against a set of standards. For example, to what extent are S-STEM scholars graduating with a baccalaureate degree in STEM in 4 years? Research, on the other hand, is focused on empirical investigation, basing its conclusion only on what is observed, measured, or calculated. If you don't have this useful model on hand, a link is in the chat too. For more information regarding the difference between research and evaluation, I encourage you to check out the February 8th webinar that Kavita led, and also an article she wrote about research and evaluation when writing a proposal. Links to the webinar, the article, and other resources are provided in the chat. Next slide. As researchers and evaluators, one maxim rings true in practically all circumstances: change is constant. So what does this mean for projects? When is it appropriate to change your evaluation processes? Evaluation experts with the International Economic Group at the World Bank provided 4 decision tree models to help evaluators think through their options. Key parameters to any changes in your processes are the evaluation questions in the original proposal and the feasibility of the enacted changes based on the availability of comparative alternative data, and the budget allocation for evaluation. A link is available of this decision tree in the chat. Next slide. To help address some of the changes happening in your projects, we're turning now to the heart of today's session, which is to break out into smaller groups and engage you all in conversation and to share knowledge. To help prime the conversation, we have 3 question prompts. The first question is directed specifically to evaluators, which is, what are some ways you have successfully collected data for your projects? Have you had to pivot in your approach to make data collection more successful? The second question is directed for the PIs and co-PIs and other project team members. Have you ever used formative evaluation findings to successfully implement program improvements? If so, give us an example in the breakout session. And then for everyone, in what ways have you disseminated program data or findings to a larger audience? We'll also have a open a Google Docs with the prompts during the breakout. Hi, I'm back. I was trying to figure out how to get back on. I was queuing, but hi everyone. Thanks again, and want to take this opportunity then to begin our share process. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kavita.
So in group 1, Marcia bravely volunteered to share out as we were all taking notes. So over to you, Marcia.
Great, thank you. I will try my best with this. Question number 1 was the question that dealt with data collection and then having to pivot the approach. There was mention of a lot of sort of the range of qualitative and quantitative ways of collecting data through surveys, interviews, focus groups, etc. We talked a little bit about pivoting, about the fact that during the time of COVID, for projects that were going on during that time, was pivoting was just what we did. We had to pivot, but others mentioned the need to pivot based on what's working, what's not working. Things like adding in a workshop. There was a nice example about, let me see if I can find this. Actually, this kind of goes into question number 2, which is the use of evaluation findings to make changes to project implementation. And there was a nice example provided about how interviews were conducted by the evaluation team. And based on these, the program actually added tutors to support students because they found that students were in fact struggling. So it was a nice example of that, how the information was shared out from the evaluation very, very quickly, and the program could act on it quickly to put things in place for students. So that was terrific. General sense that evaluation is something that the findings need to be done and provided in a timely basis in order for programs to act on the recommendations. We talked about that very traditional model of evaluation where we provide a final report, but the difficulty in that is that the program team may well have set plans in place and the budget is set in place for the following year. So how do we get those findings in the hands of the program team fast enough? And we talked about a number of mechanisms around that. Short reports. Some folks really mentioned the need to have evaluators. In a way, I don't know if embedded is the term, but evaluators involves steps along the way. It's not about gathering data at the end of the year, but gathering data continuously through the year and having mechanisms for reporting back in a timely manner so that things can be acted upon. And some of that, I think the example about adding tutors, I think that was an example of how things happened really, really quickly. And one of the comments that I kind of quoted here is it said it was dangerous to wait till the end of the program year to report back. Moving on to question number 3, the dissemination of findings. Folks in the group talked about ways of dissemination through presentations and publications that address more academic audiences. One of the folks in our group spoke to the issue of small sample sizes, small N's, and the potential challenges with that. Although this individual said, hey, let's get over it, right? There are ways of dealing with this statistically. There are ways that we can still publish on this information. There was a concern voiced about the role of research in tracks 1 and 2. It's not required, but it is a kind of unfunded requirement in a sense. I mean, people, PIs proposing projects or evaluated seem to be, assessed. The proposals are assessed on the value of the research. So that was put out there as a concern. The use of visuals, data visualization, a nice comment about mapping where students go after they've been in the S-STEM program, planning ahead for publications, getting that IRB in place for it. And then finally, reaching beyond academic audiences to do presentations to industry. If, for example, in the case of the team that I work with, they're engineering, so they interact with industry a lot, and also to alumni groups. So really kind of spreading the word widely. I hope that was quick. I hope that did justice.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, great. All right, Tara.
Sure. The way that our group kind of fell, because groups were randomly assigned, we had more individuals who are either in the proposal stage or in the just got awarded and haven't yet started collecting evaluation data. But we did have one participant who was more advanced in our S-STEM program who was very generously shared her experiences and insights. So in terms of question 1, examples of ways to successfully collect data or through evaluations, pre and post surveys to students, stakeholder interviews and focus groups. There was also this idea that it's the pre-surveys tend to have more responses than the post-surveys. So this often follow-up and engagement to get more participation in the post-surveys, or at least to indicate to students that if they can also decline to take the survey, and that also counts as so they know that they're declined. Also, one-on-one follow-ups with students help encourage their participation in the surveys, as well as documenting attendance at at event-based activities. So that way you can document attendance and use that as data. And also look at administrative data correlated with the students. So particularly in the area of transfer, for those that have community college-based S-STEM programs, you can look at transfer data, academic success data, things like that. A question was asked about creating comparison groups, and some projects do that. So they create a comparison group of non-S-STEM students and compare outcomes amongst that group with their S-STEM students. Another comment was made about the importance of, instead of doing paper surveys, making everything digital to help with response rate. And let's say question 2, we didn't talk too much about formative evaluation, but in question 3, presenting results at national conferences, especially if your project is engineering focused at ASCE, things like that, that welcomes a wide range of scholarship. That's one good way to disseminate findings at a more national level. And also ways of disseminating findings internally is important, internally with project directors, and as well as another national level way is to share through things such as the S-STEM PI Symposium. And I think that covers the major points of our group.
Okay, great. So a lot of things that you mentioned, both you and Kavita, kind of we discussed too, but centrally one of the things, because we focus mostly on questions 1 and 2 because of the makeup of our group, and 2, one of the key things that came out kind of resonating is that 1 is the small size has been an issue of just the student population engaged in this in S-STEM as scholars. And then the other one is the budget constraints to be able to conduct evaluation. And so how to get around that and being able to kind of do it successfully. So one of the things that one mentioned about like pivoting and relying a lot on focus groups and interviews in Zoom, and being able to then jump into, because everything was in Zoom during COVID times, that they were able to then jump into the team meetings of the project team, and then be able to then give more real-time feedback, and that kind of helps in the communication aspect. We had a bit of like some question back and forth about, are there other ways of collecting data? So other ways of measuring soft skills, other ways of, collecting information besides surveys. So some of the things that proposed is, I'm kind of forgetting right now what the tool is, but we'll follow up. But there is a kind of a type of an assessment for going at and measuring soft skills. And then 2, things like, as Tara mentioned, some already existing data that's being collected by the institution. So the one is like most institutions have early warning systems. So that's one way of tracking students. The other one is a little bit more creative, and this can be work with mentors, is journaling. So instead of just doing surveys, but you can say is part of the processing and reflection of a scholar is journal yourself. Journal, what are your concerns during the day? And then through the consent form, being able to share some of that and use that as part of illustrations of your reporting. So with that, let's move on. And we've actually started on this because of some of our group dynamic of some of the key takeaways for implementing and managing evaluation. So see here is start off with have a shared folder. Believe it or not, that's kind of important to have a whether it's Google, Box, Drop, SharePoint, etc., have something that all of you, including the project team, can use. But make sure it's one that everyone can have access and doesn't require an institutional registration and whatnot. Other thing is this will be helpful, and if you have a tiered access to that folder, so then you can have ones where everyone has access, but then others that are then only exclusively for the evaluator. It's also a jumping off point for when you need to then archive everything when you're ending the project. The other helpful tip is having an evaluation implementation plan. And hold on. Trying to get back to my notes. So this basically lays out when you collect what. So if you think about on-site or even virtual visits, when you're doing it according to the season, having something called a metadata tracker, which is basically lays out who's responsible for collecting the data, what is that survey tool, what are the information that need to have there listed, and even extant data. So those are some key kind of templates and tools that you will need, even something that you can routinize in terms of email templates. That makes your job a lot easier. Setting meeting schedules, that's whether weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, to just keep moving the process along. Because we know that by meeting, that means then we're kind of measuring time and progress. And then engaging a project team in some of the data collection design. And here you have, next slide. Someone in our team, in our breakout group, talked about the IRB process because they're very new. They just got their grant. So being able to know who's responsible in the institution who does that, being then able to communicate with them and perhaps get feedback before you formally submit. Those are kind of critical, because especially when you're designing a survey and you're trying to figure out, is this going to be a red flag for the institution? And so that will also help in terms of cutting back on resubmissions, which would then, if not, would cause delays. Know where those extant data is collected. So be friends with your researcher, be friends with your secondary staff who is directly responsible for these information. And like I said, I mentioned already about creating routines and then following through with what you're supposed to be doing and holding yourself accountable. And one of the key things that, and I like this because it's the unicorn icon, is that record exceptions and outliers. So in all your meetings and all sorts in your conversations, as soon as you hear those things, record them. These will be things like students dropping off, students are feeling burnt out, staff, there's turnover. These things eventually will flow into your evaluation report, but then also into other aspects, into explaining the progress of your project. So in case you have any other feedback, we would like to have that for this event. So here's a survey link and a QR code. There will also be at the end of this session, you'll see, you'll be prompted to complete the survey. Next slide. And also, if you have any additional questions for us, I know we've had a few in my team, but we'd love to, and also if you have anything follow up based upon what you heard, feel free to send us a request form and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. I think within what, 12, 24 hours, right, Kavita?
Easily, yep.
Yep, yep. And with that, next slide. Thank you so much for joining us.